Sport teaches cognitive skills such as organization, decision-making, problem-solving, interaction skills, leadership, ability to express, motivate, control, learn to win and lose, and values such as routines, discipline, perseverance, tolerance, trust, respect, and much more. Sport also has many benefits for developing emotional intelligence. It presents ideal situations to build children and young people's cognitive capacities, which will help them for the rest of their lives. During this webinar, we will give you an insight of what it takes to become exceptional. Dr. Mehta is a noted expert on innovation and achieving extreme success. He's the author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, The Innovation Biomy, and his book, Exceptionals. It is a pleasure to having Dr. Mehta with us.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you for the warm introduction, and it is great to be here. Can you all hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Great. I'm in Seattle, and I know that all of you are from all over, and I know for many of you it's quite late. So I hope you really find the session valuable. We really want to share our knowledge and learning with you today, and I'm just going to share some thoughts on what it takes for children to become exceptional. Now, exceptional talent development starts at a very young age, and the environment or setting that you create for your children plays the most important role in how they develop, and which is why we're having the session today, because there's so much we know and so much that at least I'd like to share. And I'm just going to start in a few minutes and just talk for a few minutes about some of the things. But we're all parents. Every parent dreams of their children becoming great. We want our kids to become the next Ronaldo or Serena Williams or Tiger Woods or Bill Gates. We have these great aspirations for our kids. We have the highest hopes and dreams for our children. We want what's best for them. And we try to do it our way. You know, there's no guidebook that we're handed. There's no blueprint we have that tells us what to do. So we do what we think is best. We try and encourage our children. We try to give them the tools, the resources, the training. We invest money in their growth and development. We do everything that we think we need to do as parents. But yet, in spite of our best efforts, the results are most likely not going to be there. Our children will not live up to our dreams. But that's okay. They don't have to live up to our dreams. What's not okay is that very likely they will not live up to their own dreams. Less than 5% of people achieve their dreams and goals they've set for themselves. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can help them achieve their dreams if we knew how to. If we had a formula, if you could tell them, here are the steps you take, we can increase the odds of success, we should do that. And that is what I've been studying for the past few years. I've been trying to uncover the formula for excellence. I've been trying to understand why some people become exceptional and others don't. And the exceptionals are the people who are the best in the world at what they do. They may be athletes who are household names. They may be musicians. They may be people who won the Nobel Prize. They may be people who've changed the world through art or music or science or business. They're the people who've left an impact on the world. And it really doesn't matter what field you're in. There's a set of elements that are common across all fields that are present in every journey to the top. And your best chance of helping your children achieve their full potential is understanding these common elements and applying this formula. And I'm going to talk about the formula today. And it's actually a very simple formula. 50% of what your children will achieve is based on their genes. It's just simply based on what they're born with. You can only become exceptional if you start in an area where you have a natural ability. And we're all born with different capabilities. We're not born alike. Some of us have natural advantage over others in sports because we have the gift of power or speed or agility or balance. Some are born with a gift for music. Some are born with abstract reasoning. Some are born with mathematical reasoning. Everyone is born differently. And your best bet as parents is to understand what your child's gift is. Anyone who's reached the top has done so by building on the natural capabilities, on the natural abilities. Usain Bolt, who we all know, when he was a child, he loved playing cricket. He just dreamed of becoming a cricket player. But his gift was speed. Everyone around him could see it. And in fact, it was his cricket coach that suggested to him that, hey, maybe you should take up running. Now, Bolt being who he is, with his hard work and dedication, he might have become a very good cricket player. But he only became exceptional as a runner because he built upon his natural gift. Now, as parents, your job is to ensure you understand where your children have a starting advantage. And that is the area that you need to encourage them to develop. The second part of the formula is simply effort and hard work. 25% of what makes you exceptional is the ability to work hard. You can be born with a lot of talent, but if you don't put in the effort, you don't get the results. It's that simple. Tiger Woods was probably the most talented golfer ever. When he was 2 years old, he was on a national TV showing off his golf swing. But yet he worked 13 hours a day. Djokovic, tennis superstar, he trained for 14 hours a day. While building Microsoft, where I spent a large part of my career, Bill Gates never believed in taking weekends off. In fact, in his entire 20s, he never took a vacation. That is what hard work means, and that is what the level of effort that's required to become the best in the world. Now, of course, it's easy to say this, but actually doing the hard work is actually really very hard. But it's a skill that your children can develop at an early age. Most people who've become exceptional say that very early in their lives, they understood the link between effort and outcome. They knew that if you put in the effort, you get the results. And if you can help your children understand that link and learn that link, that's going to help them into working hard. And there are other techniques also we can do where actually hard work becomes fun and rewarding. And once you do it, you always want to do more of it. So now we've talked about two things that can make your children exceptional: natural talent and hard work. And that accounts for 75% of the formula of what it takes to become exceptional. But to become the best in the world, there's still 25% that's left, and that is what makes all the difference. Your talent and effort can get you so far, but you need something that will enable you to bring that out and make the most of it. And this last part of the formula is what I call the enabling factors, the enablers. And there are 5 traits that each of them are important for your children. And I'll just go over them very quickly. The first thing is that you need to provide the right environment for your children to succeed. And part of it is the obvious physical environment. They need the facilities, they need access to facilities and equipment and all the stuff you need. But also the setting they grow up in, how they think. Kids who grow up, it has been shown that kids who grow up in a culture of striving, which means that they come from a setting where excellence is expected in everything they do, are more likely to grow up to be exceptional. The second thing you can do is support their self-belief. The most exceptional people have the confidence that they can rise to the top. The self-belief helps them achieve greatness, and nothing gets in the way. If the kids lack confidence in themselves, they're not going to achieve anything that they want. And as parents, you have to let your children believe that they can achieve anything. They have to believe that excellence is not just reserved for people they see on TV. It is something that they can attain for themselves. It is something that's accessible to everyone. And if they have that belief, then some of the barriers that prevent people from becoming exceptional are gone. The third thing is to find the right mentors and coaches. The people who grow up to be the best are always the ones who have best access to information that they require, the information and knowledge that makes them the best. They have mentors or the set of people they can rely on for learning, for support. And as a parent, your job is to ensure that these people are around them, the right coaches, the right training, the right people who can give them the expertise, not only for the functional skills, but also helping them think through things, to plan, give them the motivation, give them the support. So that's an important element as well. The fourth thing you can do is teach them the importance of detail. It's something I call micro-excellence. The people who rise higher are able to rise higher because they focus on the small things, on the very small details below. Most people only want to focus on the big thing, depending on what sport your kids are in or what you're in. If you're a golfer, you want to focus on distance. If you're a tennis player, you want to focus on your serve. But it's always the little things, the footwork, the the tiny things that no one thinks about that separate the good from the great. Michael Phelps became the greatest swimmer in history for a number of reasons, but he was known for his focus on detail. In Beijing, he won 8 gold medals, and one of the races was so close. The only reason he won it was because he had practiced how to hit the timing pad with efficiency and force. It's that little detail. In fact, in one of his other races at a different Olympics, he was blind. There was water in his goggles, so he couldn't see anything. But he knew the race so well. He knew every detail. He was able to count his strokes, so he knew when to turn around, when to get back and finish the race, and he won gold. It's this focus on the tiniest of details that separate the good from the great. And finally, the last thing you can do for your kids is to teach them to commit and stick to a goal for a long time. Most people set goals, but when things get hard, they give up and start something new. The most exceptional people are the opposite. They've established very specific and precise goals very early in their lives, and then they stick to them for years and decades. Bjorn Borg, when he was 8 years old, had a very specific goal of wanting to play in the center court at Wimbledon. That was his goal when he was 8. And of course, as we know, he played there many, many times and won there 5 times, I think. So it's very easy to quit one thing and start something new. But to become exceptional, you need to be fully committed. You should not have a plan B. You should just have one goal and go all after it. So that's all I wanted to share. It's never one thing that creates great champions. It's always an integrated approach. And the good news is that everything I just talked about for the past 10 minutes or so is something that can be evaluated, measured, improved. And if you and your children are committed to becoming great, you can apply these principles and help them become the best of the best.
Dr. Mark Kovacs is a high-performance expert in the area of human performance science and optimization. He's one of the most talented coaches in sports. Mark, we're excited to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this great webinar and educational session. For the folks that aren't that familiar with my background, I've worked in sports performance, research, innovation, and what it takes to make great athletes, but also to make individuals in other fields as well. And my background's in physiology by training. I was a professional tennis player first, and then went into the research world. And one of the big areas of focus is what do we do at the young ages to help instill the skill sets that are needed to be great. And a couple of the big areas to think about first is we have 2 divergent paths for individuals at young ages. You have the high performance elite path where they say they want to be great, they think they want to be great, but as was discussed earlier, there's these components that have to go into actually achieving it. Thinking it and wanting it are 2 different things. The third piece is the steps that need to be done to get there. And my world is mainly focused on the sports science side of things, a lot of the physical, technical, emotional aspects that need to be put in place. What we do know, use tennis for example, is there is a clear defined pathway to top 100 ATP and WTA professionals. We've studied that for nearly 2 decades of what does it take to get there, both from a quantitative perspective, meaning where do you have to be at these certain ages, ranking wise, performance wise, who should you be able to beat physically, where should you be on your speed, on your power, on your strength, on your endurance? Because if you're not hitting certain benchmarks along the way, the likelihood of you succeeding is nearly 0. And in tennis, unlike some other sports, the predictive models that we've utilized and from the data are very consistent. We know exactly where certain players need to be at certain levels to achieve certain results. There's a lot of variables, of course, so certain athletes peak later, certain athletes, get a great coach midway through their development that changes a lot of things that makes them even better. So it's one of those things where the amount of areas you need to be great at are pretty diverse, but you have to have benchmarks. And benchmarking is one of those things that just allows you to know where are you at, where are your strengths, where are those opportunities for improvement, and how do we narrow that gap between where you are today and where you want to go to. And a lot of players don't do that in a strategic and structured way. So that's one of the big factors that make exceptional individuals, not only in sport, but in other fields as well, is understanding where you're trying to get to and where do you have to hit certain metrics and markers along the way to make sure you're on the right path. We have to also be realistic. There are scenarios that tell us that the odds of you making it are very, very low because you haven't hit certain things along the way. And that's why it's important to make sure you're educated about what's required, where you need to be along the way, and to make sure you're getting the right resources to give you the right instruction, because we see all too often at younger ages, people are a bit unrealistic and aren't getting the right types of training. So what are those right types of training? A lot of people always ask. So one, you have to make sure that physically you're developing in the areas that you need to be at to make it, whatever it is that you're trying to make it. Is if it's college, if it's pro, they're two different benchmarks. They're along a similar pathway, but they are two different benchmarks. And making sure that you're working on the right things at the young ages and you don't just go to strengths. One of the challenges we see a lot with junior players is that their strengths are focused on a lot when they're young because that's what they enjoy, that's what they're good at, and that's kind of what the players want to work on. Unfortunately, just developing those strengths ends up creating a bottleneck of weaknesses that later on become very, very difficult to change. We see that technically. If a technical flaw isn't corrected at a young age, it becomes a lot harder to make those adjustments as an athlete ages. We see that physically. If an individual doesn't like to do, let's say, movements to their backhand side in a tennis example, and they just want to hit a lot of forehands, that can be successful at a young age. The challenge is at a certain time point, the levels get too strong and you can't use your strengths only. And we see a lot of players that don't develop those weaknesses and don't focus on those enough to turn them into strengths early enough. From a understanding of volume and intensity, that's one of the challenges we see a lot as well, is not necessarily the players underwork. You see that, and that's sort of obvious. The challenge is understanding always what's optimum work. And as was mentioned earlier, the greats work harder than everyone else. That's across fields, that's across sports. That needs to be done. The challenge is, what does that look like? And some people think that hours alone are a definition of working hard just because you're out there. We know that quality of the work is as important, if not a lot more important than the quantity. And don't misunderstand just being out there with quality work. And that's where we see a lot of players struggle, because they say, well, I'm out there 30 hours a week training. And then you look at what they're actually doing, and it's very low level, it's very low intensity, it's not focused on the right areas. And that's where a lot of players get far along, and then they get in front of or next to a great player or a great coach that's doing it right. And they realize very quickly everything they've been doing for the last few years, they thought they were doing it right, but it really wasn't optimized. And that's an area we spend a lot of time trying to help people with, is understanding when you say you're training hard enough to be a great college player or a great professional athlete, do you really understand what that means and what that looks like? And it's really, especially if you've got a child and this is your first go at it and you haven't been around this sport very much, you may think they're working really hard, but there are levels to this, and you see it in results as well. Being really good sectionally is great, but there's a big jump to a national level player. Then when you're a national level player, there's an even bigger jump to a top international level player. And we see the same thing with physical skill development, mental and emotional skill development. So it's really important to make sure that you have the understanding, and not asking you necessarily as a parent to know all these things, but you do want to find a good coach, a good advisor that has great experience, that can guide you throughout this process, because it is challenging. There are ebbs and flows. There are great results followed by poor results. And if you understand the periodization cycle, you know you're going to have ups and downs throughout this journey. It's not a straight line, but having a clear plan, a clear path that you're going on, and then having these metrics or benchmarks that you can check along the way to make sure you're going in the right direction, it gives you confidence. It gives the athlete confidence that, hey, I know there's going to be bumps, there's going to be bad results, there's going to be weeks, even months where I don't feel great about what's happening, but I'm hitting certain benchmarks along the way that gives me confidence that I am on the right path. And if you stay on the right path with the right instruction and hit these benchmarks, then you know that you're progressing. And we know everyone on this call right now that's worked with a lot of these exceptional individuals, they'll tell you the same thing, that these individuals work hard when no one's watching, and then they have these great results that everyone sees, and they think it comes out of nowhere. And none of that stuff comes out of nowhere. It's months, years of training that has resulted in those great results. And you don't always know when those great results are going to be either, especially in our environments. It's usually when you sometimes least expect it. And there's these great analogies that we use about individuals that gave up when they were feet away, minutes away, hours away from succeeding, whether it's inventions, whether it's closing deals for salespeople, or whether it's athletes where you've put in these months of training and you've had a couple bad results, but then you get that great result. But a lot of people sometimes give up just before they're about to have their great result. So from my perspective and the work that I do, we try to integrate a lot of these sports science aspects, from biomechanics to physical assessments to mental and emotional aspects of performance, to try to make sure that the athletes aren't having these areas that are potentially weaknesses, and also to make sure they're aware of where their strengths are, where their opportunities are for improvement, and also what are the things they need to work on for the long term if they want to achieve their goals. So as much as we always like the outcome, the process and everything we're talking about is what makes exceptional individuals. And we got to make sure we focus on the process as much as possible. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over, and excited about the rest of the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Most of you know Gabe and his track record as a champion coach. Now he has taken another mission to help parents of talented children learn how to carry out such critical tasks. Gabe, it is a pleasure to have you here with us this evening.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Emma. And thank you to all the parents that are with us tonight. We have created this group of experts to guide parents who are raising elite athletes. While everything we'll talk about is crucial in developing young talent, nothing is as impacting, especially early on, than the parents and athletes relationship. A child cannot become their best, most talented selves without the parents' constant healthy support. Parental daily involvement in childhood passions positively contribute to the overall success, ensuring the amount of practice time and preventing the child from practicing mistakes or playing around instead of concentrating on the task. The parents' involvement also serves as motivation and encouragement for the child's efforts. There is a relatively short window of time in a child's development that the parents are most involved in their lives and passions. It's a 7-year time span from age 6 to age 13. And you need to be ready to sacrifice during those years. But it will be the best investment you will ever make.
Take steps to optimize yourself as a parent, because the support of a parent in the life of their child's passion is so vital. You have to make sure you're operating in as healthy as a way as you can be on an ideological level, having a deep familiarity and an understanding of the process. You are not the coach, and your role is more fundamental. You are the project's general manager. The coach is part of your team, and he works for you. Learn as much as you can about the sport. It's your job and responsibility. Look for experts from the beginning. It would be best if you learn from them. Find the right coach. That person must believe and be a part of the project. Since parents have an emotional attachment, it is more advisable that they demand from the coach. In turn, they push the student more, preserving the relationship between the parents and the children. Be a role model, the leader of the team. This doesn't mean you do everything, but that you trust and defer when you must, and you keep things pointed to a clear goal, namely growth and victory. Be smart and control your emotions, as frustrated as you may get for whatever reason. You need to uphold your half of the relationship and the integrity of yourself as a leader. Don't do or say anything you may regret later. Be honest in every aspect of relating to your child, both inside and outside the training context. Embody the concept of no fear. Being a leader is having the courage and thus instilling that courage into your team's other members. Parents have to encourage their children to make intelligent choices, knowing that it is okay to make mistakes.
Parenting elite children takes knowledge, discipline, and 100% commitment. True wisdom is only gained through action, trial, and error. Parents must have a written plan from the start. A dream without a plan is just an illusion. A child's grand vision can't become a reality unless they work from the ground up, completing the foundations before moving on to the next step. The process is methodical, logical, and patient. Parents are an essential part of the long process, and without their support, it is more challenging to accomplish the children's dreams and aspirations.
Emma is an athlete, parent, and expert coach specializing in high performance. Her unique approach in helping leaders and executives to train like elite athletes to drive results.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Gabe, for inviting me to be here with you all today. And as I consider the question, what does it take to go from talented to great? Three things come to my mind, both as an athlete and a coach and a mum myself, which I hope might resonate with you all. The first is to get to exceptional, it's never a straight line. And secondly, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the third question, I guess, that I'd like to address is how can we as parents best support our young athletes to really help them on this path? So first, if we think about it not being a straight line, I'd like to share a quick story with you all. Certainly, it's one that touches me particularly because it was the day of a big race for my then 9-year-old daughter, Leah, who's a triathlete. And race day was going extremely well. She was executing her pre-race plan with her coach to perfection until it came to the third part of the race, the final run and to the finish line. As she was gaining distance on her closest rival throughout the whole race, the crowd started running and rising in participation and anticipation of this amazing final. But as she closed in to the finish line and took the final corner, you might be thinking that it was all plain sailing to the finish line and everyone was up cheering, but the story didn't quite go like that. On this final curve, one of the race stewards indicated the wrong turn to our young athlete, which she took, and it effectively cost her the race. When she turned back, realizing her error, and tried to then catch her nearest opponent, it was almost impossible. And in the sprint to the finish line, she ended up getting pipped to the post. Now, why do I tell you that story when we're talking about what it takes to be exceptional? Well, this is part of what I was meaning when I said it's never a straight line. And it takes some bumps and failure on the road, I believe, to truly make it to exceptional. because it's when we fail and how we address that failure and how we can help our young athletes address that failure that the learning is really accelerated. And how we choose to learn from that really defines who we will become, and who we will become not only as an athlete, but also as a person. It's all about what Carol Dweck would call growth mindset. If we can see failure and difficulty as a chance to learn, I think we're definitely on a winning track to high performance. My friend Gabe would probably say his favorite question for all athletes and people alike is, what did you learn? And I think as parents, if we can get into that culture of continually asking, what did you learn? And encourage that idea that in every experience, good or bad, there's a learning, I think that really sets them up to success. And the second point, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I often think that when we see exceptional athletes or leaders, we see the pinnacle, we see the trophies, and it almost seems that it's very easy to get there. But as parents of athletes, we know the grind that it takes to get there. And keeping them on that path takes a lot of work, not only from the athlete, but from the athlete's family and parents and entourage. It takes grit. Angela Duckworth did amazing studies on what it really takes to separate those that meet success with those that don't. And it's not talent alone. Grit is a determining factor. And I think the more that we can teach our young athletes and children to get up when they get knocked down, to have perseverance and passion and really go the extra mile. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And lastly, as a parent, I don't always get it right for sure, but what can I share in terms of how can we best help our young athletes? And I think it goes a lot down to what I help leaders when I coach them. Lead yourself first. Lead by example. Model the behaviors that we'd like to see in our young athletes, which means model what it means to have grit. Model what it means to have a routine of excellence. Be that person so that what you model becomes part of your family's culture and routine, and the athlete can then model the same behaviors in their own pathway to being exceptional. And again, as parents, we are all striving our best to support them, especially in these difficult times that we've experienced all this year. But taking a step back and realizing that we're part of a team is also the lesson that I learned from that race day I shared earlier. The Layers coach that day knocked on the window and helped me learn a very important lesson too. It's not in winning the race that we always learn the most, but picking ourselves up and starting again with all those lessons learned is a true factor that can really set you apart. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here.